meiner Sicht kein wirklicher
when I was preparing for this speech. So we have today 64 countries here from Europe and Indo-Pacific. The EU, with our member states, cooperates well with each of you on various topics we will discuss later. Now, for today's speech, I face the dilemma whether I name all of you and all the substantive projects that we do with all of you and list you, each one of you by name, and indicating how we cooperate, or this would have taken all day, and there wouldn't been any room for any other speeches because of the richness of our relations. Or I just mention a few examples, which would mean that some are left out. So what I did is that I opted for not to mention any country specifically by name, but in doing so, I want to stress how deeply we value our cooperation with each and every one of you, even if I do not mention any country by name. Excellencies, ministers, when the European Union launched the Indo-Pacific strategy in 2021, we wanted to strengthen our strategic presence and partnership in the region. Together with our 27 member states who amplify the European offer, our aim was to promote international rules-based order, sustainable development and regional security. I suspect that in 2021, many of the Indo-Pacific were not fully aware what the EU was about or what we are doing in various countries in the region. Many also may have been puzzled of why the EU expressed strategic interest in the region at all. Now, fast forward to 2025. I believe we can all agree that both Europe and our partners in the Indo-Pacific are at the critical juncture. Both Europe and the Indo-Pacific are also facing the challenges of modern mercantilism and strategic competition. Moreover, the resilience of our countries in both regions is being tested by climate change, terrorism, global and regional crises. So whether we are closer to the Atlantic Ocean or the Andaman Sea, we are all in the same boat. Clearly, these outside pressures are a challenge for both Europe and the Indo-Pacific countries. But what also unites us is our commitment to the international rules-based order. By that I mean international law and multilateral institutions, norms and procedures we ourselves have set up to ensure compliance as well as accountability. I never tire of saying that international law is at the foundation of all we aspire to, and the ultimate power of the law is simple. It is always a chance for progress. So let's turn these challenges into opportunities for growth, partnership and innovation. One such opportunity is to raise our game in protecting undersea infrastructure. While UNCLOS remains the foundation of the international law of the sea framework, we should make sure that our legal toolbox is up to date and adequate to address new threats. That is why this afternoon I'm launching a new initiative looking into ways we can protect the critical maritime infrastructure better. Because we need to do this better. When we do not secure the undersea cables that carry vast amounts of data, we are leaving ourselves vulnerable. I want to encourage exchanges of information and the development of creative ideas to protect our infrastructure and increase our resilience against potential threats. There are important legal discussions to have so that legal expertise will feed into the political discussions. These should look into improvements of to the existing applicable international law in line with the international law of the sea and UNCLOS. I believe this can benefit us all, so let's join forces. This is exactly the kind of partnership that Europe is offering to the Indo-Pacific along three lines. First, we all want to enhance security and stability. That's why we are concluding security and defence partnerships and holding dialogues and consultations on how we can do so together and within the rules. and conducting joint naval exercises, and also working on a maritime domain awareness and information sharing, and a host of other initiatives. Second, we all want economic growth that is sustainable and secure. That is what our worldwide investment programme, Global Gateway, is all about. EU investment is helping farmers to bring their goods to domestic and global markets. It is also why we are working on critical raw materials with some of you and would like to do so with many more. After we concluded free trade agreements with some of the countries in the region, bilateral trade jumped by more than 40%. We hope that agreements we are currently negotiating with some of you will deliver that too. We all want to boost connectivity by bridging digital tech, human capital and physical proximity, which is what our digital partnerships and dialogues are all about. And this is why we are turbocharging our cooperation under Erasmus Plus and Horizon Europe. And third, we all want a sustainable development and sustainable environment. And this week we had important discussions at COP30. Climate change affects us all, as our partners in the Indo-Pacific know all very, very too well, even might say. Climate change challenges us to work together. When we speak of partnership, it is not just words. Whenever a country in the region is hit by earthquakes or violent typhoons or other disasters, the European Union is there with emergency relief and humanitarian assistance. Excellencies, ministers, the geopolitical imperative of today's world is actually a call for action to all of us. It is in our interest to be closer partners, because whether it comes to security, sustainable growth, connectivity, climate action, or the defense of the international law, we are stronger when we are together. We are 4 years into Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine with no real signs that Moscow wants peace. If Russia really wanted peace, it would have accepted the unconditional ceasefire that has been on the table since March this year. And only 2 days ago, another 26 Ukrainian civilians were killed in Russian attacks. We are supportive of any plan that brings about just and lasting peace. As for the peace plan we understand that President Zelensky has been presented with, we have always said that any peace plan to work, it has to be with Ukraine and with the Europeans on board. And this theatre of war is not confined to Europe. It is connected to the Indo-Pacific as well as by virtue of the troops, arms and ammunition from North Korea flowing to Russia. And because China says it's neutral, but its dual-use experts are fueling Russia's war. On top of that, China and Russia are working together to overhaul a global economic and security order. That is certainly of interest to all of us here. And this partnership can only work if we collaborate on all levels, on citizens, our companies, on our development banks, our countries and our regions. We need each other more than ever before. So what are we all waiting for? Let's start to work. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Indonesia, Sugiarto. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, High Representative Kaja Kallas. Excellencies, I wish to thank, first of all, for the host for organizing today's meeting. As multilateralism is weakening, many of us have had to look for alternative ways to address the growing array of global challenges. But I want to be absolutely clear that these alternatives are not intended to replace the multilateral system. Rather, they are temporary measures designed to fill the gaps while we continue advocating for a renewed, stronger and fairer global order. One such alternative is to strengthen regionalism including through deeper cooperation in Indo-Pacific. Excellencies, the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific has much to offer. It is grounded on the principles of openness, inclusivity, transparency, and respect for international law, principles that resonate well with that of the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. For some time, we have emphasized the importance of creating synergy between ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and the EU strategy for Indo-Pacific. Now, we must advance to the next level by exploring concrete programs and delivering tangible results for our peoples. The ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum, or AIPF, is designed precisely to serve that purpose. Initiated during Indonesia's chairship of ASEAN in 2023, AIPF is a milestone that transforms dialogue into real actions. Connectivity, maritime collaboration, and digital innovation are among the areas of cooperation. Therefore, I also would like to invite the EU and fellow Indo-Pacific states to be part of this endeavor. Excellencies, to achieve sustainable growth, there is no place for a zero-sum game, and let us instead uphold inclusive cooperation and ensure that disputes are resolved peacefully and responsibly. Only then can the Indo-Pacific continue to thrive as a region of peace, stability, and shared prosperity. I thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Denmark, Lars Løkke Rasmussen.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, dear friends, it's good to see all of you, and I can't hide that I'm more than pleased to see representatives from more than half of the world's population here today. Together we account for more than half of the world's GDP and more than 40% of UN member states. We represent a diverse set of countries, from small, flat countries like my own, to vast and hilly countries in Africa, from tiny populations to the world's most populated nations. So what do we have in common, you could ask? What can we achieve together? I have given a lot of thought to this, not least on my recent visits to countries such as India, Indonesia, Japan, Kenya, Malaysia, the Philippines and South Africa. Because we have different cultures, different ways of living, different systems, but we share a concern for the new geopolitical reality. Great power, rivalry, trade barriers, trade war, disputed territory, new security challenges, hybrid threats, cyber attacks, disregard for international law and climate change. All this affects us all. But I am cautiously optimistic. From many conversations in Europe and in the Indo-Pacific, it is clear to me that we not only share the same challenges, we also share a vision for the future, a vision of free and rule-based trade, respect for international law, open trade routes, secure and robust supply chains, green transition, sustainable development, peace, stability and predictability. So how do we address the challenges together and pursue this vision? I hope to gain a deeper insight and consensus on that today. Just last month, the EU Foreign Affairs Council agreed that the EU should intensify its strategic focus, presence, visibility and actions in the Indo-Pacific. And today, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas on deeper cooperation, strengthened partnerships and free trade agreements. The vision is there and the potential is enormous. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and External Trade, Peter Saanel Akovaka from Solomon Islands. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Your Excellencies, EU High Representative and Vice President, Madam Kallas, Honourable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. I bring warm greetings from the people of Solomon Islands and the Blue Pacific continent. I thank the European Union for the invitation to allow this ministerial forum and for the warm hospitality extended to me and my delegation. I speak not only for the Solomon Islands, but also on behalf of my Prime Minister, Honorable Jeremiah Manele, who is the current chair of the Pacific Island Forum leaders. We meet in this forum with a clear purpose and a clear theme, building together a resilient and prosperous and a secure future. Excellencies, the Indo-Pacific is where our future comes together. If there is a time that we need each other, today is the time. Our sea lanes carry trade, our cables carry ideas, our shared rules protect our security. For the Blue Pacific and for Europe, stability, sustainable development, prosperity, and respect for international law are not slogans. They are the foundation of our people's daily lives. The Pacific Island Forum leaders through the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent and the 50th Pacific Island Forum leaders meeting in the Solomon Islands in September this year have set a course: protect our people and our planet, build resilient, create partnership that build in practice, not just on paper. For Solomon Islands, climate change is not a distant concern. It is a lived reality. It erodes our coastline, disrupts food security, threatens the very survival of our coastal communities and low-lying islands. Solomon Islands is determined to turn these challenges into opportunity, building a cleaner, more resilient, and more inclusive future through partnership, shared responsibility, and climate justice. Our National Climate Change Policy 2023 to 2032 and our long-term low-emission development strategy chart a pathway to net zero development. Our National Adoption Plan, now being finalized, maps coastal actions in water, agriculture, health, infrastructure, and fisheries that reducing climate change risk directly improve people's life. In responding to the impact of climate change, my country, in collaboration with partners, is implementing mitigating programs and projects at the national and community level. An example is the construction of the Tina Hydro project for major renewable energy, which is replacing 70% of our national capital diesel power electricity generation, reducing emission and low electricity cost for household and business. Across the provinces, solar mini-grids are lighting clinics and schools and powering small businesses. Through the Solomon Islands Roadmap Aviation Project, we are building climate-resilient bridges, airports that can stand stronger cyclones, flash flood, and rising sea. Along our coast, the Melanesian Coastal and Marine Ecosystem Resilient Program is restoring mangroves and reefs, the natural defense that protect lives today and store blue carbon for tomorrow. But resilient requires resources and speed. The Pacific Island countries continue to access support for the Green Climate Fund, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and other partners. Yes, yet access is too slow and too complex. We call for faster and fairer and more predictable finance, especially for adoption and loss and damage funds, must be at the community level with simplified procedures, local executions, and clear results. As Forum Chair, Solomon Islands will focus on the following regional priorities. First, we will put climate resilience on top of the regional agenda, scale adoption finance, operationalize loss and damage, strengthen disaster risk, reduce black nature-based solutions, and deliver a just energy transmission for small island developing states that is affordable and reliable. Second, sustainable ocean and fisheries. The Pacific Ocean is a global asset. We must end illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, uphold science-based management, expand value addition to our fish in Pacific communities, enhance marine maritime domain awareness, and turn satellite data into local actions. Third, improve connectivity and inclusive growth. Invest in resilient infrastructure and digital link that reach remote islands. Train our youth with skills. Unlock funding for micro, small, and medium-sized entrepreneurs. And promote a high-quality green tourist recovery that benefits local community. Strong partnership turn promises into projects. With the European Union's Global Gateway, we have a practical path to build climate-resilient, high-quality infrastructure that matches Pacific priorities. As chair of the Pacific Forum, Solomon seeks predictable and reliable climate finance, target technical cooperation, scholarships, and co-investment that builds local capacity to bring to the Blue Pacific leadership, stewardship of one of the world's largest ocean spaces, and strong track record of bridge building resilience. Excellencies, colleagues, allow me to propose. I come from a far place, and I'm on the other side of the world, so please allow me to speak a little longer. First, establish the Pacific EU Climate Adaptation Window, a streamlined SDS SEEDS focused facility that moves quickly from concept to project with community-led execution and transparent result. Secondly, launch an Indo-Pacific Maritime Monitoring and Enforcement Initiative, linking EU assets with Pacific system for real-time data, joint analysis, and coordinate action against IUU fishing and maritime pollution. Thirdly, create skills and mobility partnership that align EU demand with Pacific talent in the green and blue economy, in renewable, resilient infrastructure, sustainable fisheries, and ecosystem restoration, backed by a scholarship and mutual recognition. These proposals are not a new declaration. They are tools to deliver finance that flows, data that deters crime, and skills that create jobs. They respect national ownership, lift community outcomes, and strengthen a rule-based order at sea. Excellencies and colleagues, Solomon Islands will use our PI, the Pacific Island Forum chair, to help focus on implementation. We will champion streamlined access to climate and development finance, support initiatives that protects our ocean and our people, and we insist on partnership that measure success by changing lives, not by communiques. We invite the European Union and Indo-Pacific partners to join us, project by project, port by port, village by village. The theme of this forum calls for us to act together. For Solomon Islands and for the Blue Pacific continent, climate action is survival. It is also our contribution to a peaceful, resilient Indo-Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Johann Wadefull.
Dear Kaja, good morning, everybody. Dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, my very first long-distance trip as German Foreign Minister earlier this year took me to the Indo-Pacific. This was a very much conscious decision, because security and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific and Europe are closely intertwined. Because what happens in the Indo-Pacific directly affects us in Europe and vice versa. And because I believe that together we will shape our global future economically, politically, and strategically. We are meeting at a time when the world is changing rapidly. Competition between great powers is increasing, competition over influence, over resources, and over norms. We see this in Europe with Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. We see it in Asia, in growing tensions in the Indo-Pacific. We see it globally, in the race for the Arctic, in the increasing number of trade disputes, and in the fragmentation of the rules-based trading system. In this environment, together, we face a joint set of challenges. Rules that we considered the backbones of international order are being called into question. We are witnessing the ever more dangerous effects of climate change. And we are facing risks, but also joint opportunities in the technological revolution. My dear friends, which conclusions should we draw from these manifold challenges? I'm convinced that we need an unwavering commitment to invest in our partnerships, because we can only secure our freedom, our security, and our prosperity if we stand together. But the truth is also the world around us is changing, and we need to change in it. In Europe, Russia's illegal war has become a cautionary tale, one that showed us how highly complex it can be to find the right balance between partnership and dependence, how dangerous over-dependencies can be, and how important it is to be resilient and able to defend ourselves. And let me be clear, we have learned our lessons. That is why in Germany we have upped our defense spending and our investment in security. And that is why the European Union as a whole is strengthening its defense readiness and redefining its role as a geopolitical actor. For example, by strategically diversifying its trade relationships and ambitiously negotiating free trade agreements. The conclusion of negotiations with Indonesia was an important milestone this year. I'm confident that this success will also provide new momentum for our negotiations with India, which we are in a final stage, as well as for those with Thailand, Malaysia and the Philippines. Yet what remains unchanged are our common interests. Together, we are aiming to secure free trade and open sea lanes, because we agree that prosperity can be achieved through cooperation. Together, we are committed to a rule-based international order, because we agree that peace and stability matter globally. Together, we are investing in our ability to work as a global community, because we agree that global security risks can only be overcome by working mutually. And to achieve all this, we need partners. That is why I have made promoting and deepening global partnerships a top priority for my ministry and for Germany's foreign policy. Luckily, the countries in the Indo-Pacific and in Europe are natural partners who are already cooperating closely. Together we are working through free trade agreements on maritime security and supply chain resilience. The EU's Global Gateway Initiative sends a clear signal that Europe is present in and committed to the Indo-Pacific region. However, many of my conversations during my trips to Japan, Indonesia and India made clear there's even greater potential for cooperation and dialogue. So, dear friends, today's meeting is an important signal of friendship and shared responsibility. In these times of uncertainty, let us stand together and move forward together. Times are changing, and so is the European Union. But one thing remains. The EU stands ready as a reliable and strong partner, ready to face global challenges together with you. I thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora of Seychelles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an honor to address this forum. The newly elected President of the Republic of Seychelles, Dr. Patrick Emini, has asked me to extend his appreciation to the EU for convening this vital gathering and for its steadfast commitment to fostering dialogue, peace and cooperation across the Indo-Pacific. Over the past year, we have seen meaningful progress in trade, digital cooperation and green transitions fueled by the Global Gateway, digital connectivity initiatives and the Just Energy Transition partnerships. The maritime domain is central to peace, economic prosperity, trade, connectivity and food security. yet it is increasingly challenged by renewed threats of piracy in the Western Indian Ocean, illegal fishing, illicit maritime trafficking, and disruptions to strategic sea lanes in the Red Sea and the broader Indo-Pacific. Addressing these risks requires a concerted effort to address the root causes of insecurity, stronger coordination, and sustained multilateral engagement to safeguard stability and navigation. The interlinkages between the EU and the Indo-Pacific are therefore more important than ever. Our shared priorities, diplomacy, secure sea routes, sustainable blue growth, digital transformation, and resilient supply chains, reinforce one another. As you are aware, Seychelles chairs the contact group on illicit maritime activities. CGIMA has become an important platform for aligning priorities, strengthening legal Finnish cooperation, and protecting the maritime interests of all states. Seychelles commends EU NAVFOR operations Atalanta, along with the Indian Navy, for their decisive actions in early November 2025 in the liberation of the Hella Aphrodite and the interception of a dhow used as a mothership. Within our jurisdiction, the Seychelles Coast Guard also acted resolutely, intercepting another dhow with illicit narcotics. In line with our new national policy on search and rescue, vessel and cargo were destroyed at sea, and 6 crew members transferred for investigation with full adherence to the rule of law. Excellencies, Seychelles places strong value on inclusive and effective multilateralism where all states, large and small, can contribute meaningfully to discussions on regional and global security. Regional organizations such as the African Union, the Indian Ocean Commission, and the Indian Ocean Rim Association play an essential role in fostering dialogue, confidence building, and cooperative security in our part of the world. When these regional mechanisms work in harmony with global partners, they help reinforce the principles of international law and contribute to long-term stability. As a small island developing state, Seychelles consistently advocates for approaches that promote trust, transparency, and mutual respect, and that avoid deepening polarization within the international system. Our objective is to transform vigilance into resilience, linking maritime security with human security, and regional and global stability with shared prosperity. I wish ourselves productive deliberations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Radoslav Sikorski. Please, Radek.
Thank you. Like Johan of Germany, I also made some of my first trips to the Indo-Pacific on your behalf, Kaja, to Sri Lanka, and Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, to stress how important it is despite the geographical distance. And that's because even though we're so far apart, we share some geopolitical characteristics. Namely, we have powerful neighbors that are not necessarily pleased with their own borders, that are revisionist powers. And for countries that are smaller than them, that's obviously a source of anxiety for our governments and for our citizens. We also know that the direction of travel as regards globalization, as regards the trade system, is now away from lowering barriers. It is in favor of raising them, which is, again, not a good thing for our kinds of countries. So there is an extra premium on us collaborating. Most of us here are aspirational countries, countries that still have reserves of growth, of ambition. And also by being so far apart geographically means that in sensitive areas such as agriculture, our economies are actually compatible. We don't compete. In Poland, we don't grow rice or papaya or some of the other wonderful foods that you have in your region. But we do make helicopters. We have digitalized our societies. We We have put our finances on digital platforms, and we've spent a lot of money since liberating ourselves from the communist yoke on water treatment and on clean energies. So we feel that there is a great deal of compatibility. I completely agree with you, Kaja, that we need to share experiences and do something about the security of critical underwater infrastructure. That is something that is key to both regions, cables and pipelines. When UNCLOS was agreed, this was not an issue. It is now. It urgently needs to be updated, and I believe this is one of the most urgent issues on our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Singapore, Vivian Balakrishnan. Please, Vivian.
Thank you, Kaja. And colleagues, yesterday I perhaps made an overly robust proposal that although the EU and the Pacific nations may be geographically set far apart, but because of our strategic alignment, that actually means there's both an opportunity and an urgent need for a deeper engagement between our two regions. The second point I wanted to make was that for all of us, especially small states in the Indo-Pacific, we want to be engaged on our own merits. We do not want our part of the world to be engaged as an arena for proxy wars between big powers, or simply as a natural resource reservoir to be exploited. Having said that, I would make the point that in our part of the world, trade, investment, and infrastructure are strategy. I'm arguing for a more economic focus as opposed to a security-centered rules of engagement with my part of the world. Yesterday, I mentioned the urgent need and opportunity for ASEAN and the EU to either do a complete region-to-region free trade agreement or in any case to achieve much closer economic complementary relationship. Today I also want to highlight another incipient partnership, and that's between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU. I think a full membership may be beyond immediate reach, but surely a strategic partnership between the EU and the CPTPP is feasible. We can work on harmonization of standards, interoperability of systems. We can mutually support free trade and a rules-based international order. We are naturally aligned on these. So I'm making the point that there is much that we can do. And in fact, just a couple of days ago, ministers of both from trade ministers of the EU and from the CPTPP economies got together in Australia and are exploring some ideas well worth pursuing in the months and years to come. The next part I wanted to quickly emphasize was the opportunities in the digital economy and in the green transition. And I'm very gratified with the very strong vote of support by the European Parliament last week to ratify the EU-Singapore Digital Trade Agreement. Once in force, this will provide greater legal certainty for our companies in both our regions and foster greater connectivity between Singapore and the EU. But the EU knows that Singapore always views ourselves as simply a pathfinder. And whatever you do with Singapore, you should be looking to expand that and more generally engage our region on that basis. We are also grateful to the EU for your support in our green transition, for your support for the ASEAN power grid, and we look forward to real projects which future-proof our economies for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Parliamentary Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan.
Thank you. High Representative Kallas, distinguished guests, it is a great honor to have this opportunity to deliver a keynote speech at this timely and important conference. I express my sincere gratitude to High Representative Kallas and the European External Action Service for their generous hospitality in hosting this conference. Chairperson, today, the free, open, and stable international order that we have long cherished is facing profound challenges due to historical shifts in the balance of power and intensifying geopolitical competition. In addition, the rise of emerging and developing countries, the worsening of global challenges, and the emergence of new issues arising from advancement of science and technology are all intricately intertwined. Under such circumstances, some argue that there is a lack of universally acceptable views on the nature of the international order, and that consensus is lacking on what the fundamental principles of the next era should be. However, I think, and we think in Japan, that the answer to these concerns is clear. For example, in Japan's neighborhood in the Indo-Pacific, the assertive military activities of China, North Korea, and Russia raise serious concerns. In Europe, Russia continues its aggression against Ukraine, an outrageous act that shakes the international order. Moreover, in the international community, there are concerning developments where certain countries weaponize their monopolistic or oligopolistic control over critical mineral supply chains to exert pressure on us and impose their own principles and claims. Such unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion are unacceptable anywhere on Earth, be it in Europe, be it in the Indo-Pacific, or elsewhere. Furthermore, as it has become clear that the security of the Euro-Atlantic and that of the Indo-Pacific is inseparable, and that the economic security of a country can be severely affected by developments far beyond its borders today, what we must collectively seek is a commitment to restore, maintain, and strengthen a free and open international order based on the rule of law. Chairperson, against this backdrop, a free and open Indo-Pacific, FOIP, which Japan proposed in 2016, will mark its 10th anniversary next year. FOIP, centered on principles that resonate widely in the international community, such as freedom, openness, diversity, and inclusivity, and respect for the rule of law, is, I believe, increasingly relevant today from the perspective of promoting international cooperation. Japan will continue to actively promote FOIP as a cornerstone of its foreign policy and continue to adapt it to contemporary challenges as well. Under FOIP, Japan will work to build an international environment where the strong do not oppress the weak, in cooperation with like-minded countries that share fundamental values. We will expand cooperation in providing international public goods, including areas such as climate and environment, the high seas, outer space, and cyberspace, and contribute to overcoming vulnerabilities in the region through enhanced connectivity. To further advance FOIP, we intend to strengthen cooperation with partners including Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, ASEAN, South Asia, and Pacific Island countries. In this regard, we welcome Europe's growing interest and further engagement in the Indo-Pacific. I would like to conclude by expressing my hope that today's meeting will further deepen Europe-Indo-Pacific relations and contribute to peace and prosperity in both regions. I thank you.
Thank you. That is